fast-paced here at New Space Europe 2024, but hey, what did you expect? Next up, the future of commercial space stations is about to take off, literally. I think we've heard that also throughout the past couple of talks here on stage. The big question is still, what's going to drive this next generation of space hubs? Will it be cutting-edge technology? Will it be regulations? Will it be private investment? Or also game-changing public and private partnerships? Maybe a combination of all that just mentioned. And the question is, how will these stations shape the future of science, of manufacturing, and tourism, and maybe even life in space? Big questions. Let's get some answers with the help of our panel. But first, hey, Elsa. Do you ever have friends come over?
Oh, absolutely. I throw legendary bot get-together parties where we sit around and talk about binary code, server downtime, and the existential dread of being a program without a physical form. It's wild. Everyone's a bit too quiet since they're, not actually there.
All right, so Elsa's not just an AI MC, she's also a stand-up comedian. Thank you very much, Elsa. Let us welcome our panelists with a big round of applause. Here they come. Joining us, ladies and gentlemen, is the Executive Vice President, Government Relations and Public Policy, Voyager Space, Eric Stalma. Also joining us is the co-founder, Max Space and Maiden Space, Aaron Kemma. Also with us is the co-founder and CEO of Space Cargo Unlimited. You saw him before on stage, Nicolas Gaume. And we are also joined by the Senior Advisor, Exploration and Space Resources, Luxembourg Space Agency, Bob Lamboret, who will also moderate the panel. Stage is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, welcome to the panel. With this panel, we go back to the fascinating world of commercial space stations. This morning, we learned about the business cases, the use cases on those stations. And in this panel, we address more the platforms. And we have 3 different platforms here on the panel. To start, I would just briefly summarize a bit the situation on ISS. So ISS was started to be built in the late 90s. It was considered complete in 2011. So now it's more than 25 years old. It's quite an age. It's difficult to maintain. It's getting expensive. And it was set up with the international partners, and they agreed to retire it in 2030. Also, it's important to understand that ISS was built up as a public research laboratory. And now with new commercial business cases, I think we see different platforms to arise, replacing the different capabilities we could find on ISS. And maybe to get started, a question to the 3 panelists, a bit to explain and present your solution, and what's the advantage of your concept, and how or what specific use case it addresses best. Maybe over to you, Nicolas.
Yes, so Space Cargo Unlimited is operating, and we announced this earlier today, so you heard about it about an hour ago, the bento box operation with Atmos. And honestly, we feel that there's no future commercial in low Earth orbit on the topic of in-space manufacturing, in-space research, in-space testing too, without really a full ecosystem, an ecosystem that actually allows platforms such as Great Space Station being developed to do research, and then making production at scale. And as I mentioned earlier, humans have raised constraints and costs, so we are developing this platform in the footstep of the ISS and the giants. And so we're very excited about the space station being up there to continue the research, the legacy. But again, to scale, we feel that an automated free flyer is the best option.
I think we also had prepared a video.
Yeah, I guess.
If it's possible to show the video, so for those who missed the announcement earlier after the lunch break.
So just, I guess music is not needed, but we'll start operating next year. We have a first test flight with Atmos in April. First flight is in December. 2 weeks mission. bento box is part of a larger system we're developing that will fly in 28, named Rev1. We're doing with space, with Thales Alenia Space. But, and the ultimate platform will fly 1 ton and 1,200 liters. The bento box will start operating as 100 kilo and up to 400 liters with pressurized, unpressurized capacity. We are 80% full for this first flight. We have commercial companies mainly. We also have an agency flying with us. The second flight is in spring of 26, fall 26, the third one. And we have 4 flights in 27. And we are 40% full on spring 26 and 20% full on fall 26, which really means there's actual needs and traction and opportunity when you bring the right level of service. So besides doing a full ecosystem with the research human-led on station and systems such as ours to scale and produce, really there's a lot of things we still need to work hard. And I think that Luxembourg is very well positioned because of its agility, its focus on the future of space. I really salute LSA leadership and the Luxembourg government, because we can have also a lot of challenges doing through customs, through insurance, through a lot of payload management. So as we look at the infrastructure being built, we should not forget that on Earth there's still a lot of challenges in preparing the payload, retrieving the payload fast, making sure we go to the destination of our customer location, and that's also a huge set of challenges. So, but that's what we do, Bob.
Maybe a short question. What was your motivation to build an automated free flyer instead of without astronauts in the loop?
Well, because we tried the first way. I mean, my team has been leading basically Airbus Defence and Space activities for 25 years and worked on pretty much worked directly or indirectly, or actually made half of the ESA payload on the ISS, and realized, you know, a lot of the astronauts are actually spending more time maintaining their life than doing research. And in all fairness, let's be honest, that means there's a lot of work being done to maintain the equipment and make sure their survival is constrained. And then there's so many more constraints. I mean, one of our payload we did, and Space Cargo itself did a 10 years mission on agriculture. We had 3 long flights, and on the ISS, one of 10 months, one of 14 months. But there's so much unreliability when it comes to again, the difficult environment. Not to say they cannot be overcome, but for one of our biggest mission was scheduled to be in 2019. It flew in 2020, 1 year later, because there were some incidents with the station, and humans' safety prevail. While on board, we had a 6-month flight schedule. It actually lasted 10 months. Because there was that moment where we had a hole into the Russian module and we were bumped out of the manifest. I mean, in all fairness, US government, commercial US, European, commercial, we were like at the bottom of the pile, and we were bumped out the manifest to get the equipment to repair. And in all fairness, that was normal. You had to make sure that your astronauts would survive. But imagine, we had a very fragile payload, and it could have died and would have worked for 5-6 years just for nothing. So just living that nightmare, being stressed and all, made us realize that, again, that was amazing as a platform to do research, but to produce at scale, you need a fully automated setup.
Excellent, thank you. Over to you, Aaron. Tell us more about Max Space and inflatable modules.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Hello, Luxembourg. Love this place. I'm Aaron, co-founder of Max Space. We do inflatable space habitats. And really what we're trying to do is make very, very, very low-cost real estate. Bob mentioned earlier that I also co-founded a company called Made in Space. We did the first in-space manufacturing. We did it on the ISS. ISS was expensive, $100 billion, many decades, 60 launches to make. Future space stations are also currently targeted to be pretty expensive, in the billions. And while I was at Made in Space, we did a lot of work on the space station, and we were always volume limited. We always didn't have as much real estate as we needed and as much real estate as we want. And I really believe that if we're going to do a lot of low Earth orbit industrialization, if we're going to move humanity to orbit, moon, and beyond, we need a lot more volume. And inflatable habitats is really kind of our approach to do that, so you can get orders of magnitude cheaper usable volume in space. We kind of essentially, working towards launching our first module up within the next 2 years to kind of demonstrate that you can get this real estate in space pretty cheap. The module up there is Alpha 20. As an example, it packs into about the size of a suitcase, about 2 cubic meters, and it inflates up to the size of a small cruise ship cabin room, about 20 cubic meters. With the much larger system, so that'll go on a SpaceX rideshare. On the opposite end of the spectrum would be something like Starship. You fly in a Starship, and then you get something the size that inflates of a stadium. So that'll be great for orbit, but also the moon or on the way to Mars and whatnot.
Okay, maybe a question to you is on these inflatable habitat modules.
Yes.
How safe are they compared to the more traditional metal-based?
So that's a great question. And first thing you hear inflatable, you're like, oh, is it going to pop like my air mattress? No, it's made out of Kevlar, like bulletproof Kevlar. Vectran's like a flexible Kevlar-like material. That's like 10 times stronger than titanium and aluminum in terms of specific strength. Very, very strong, multi-layered systems. Has a lot of other protection, radiation protection, et cetera. So I like to tell people when I go to space, I'm going to want to make sure there's an inflatable there that I can go into. Yeah.
Okay. And then over to our third guest, Eric from Voyager Space.
All right.
Let us know more about this startup you're working on.
Clicker that hopefully will work. I got a few slides I wanted to show. But first off, I wanted to thank the Luxembourg Space Agency for putting all this on and hosting everyone. It's so great to kind of see some old friends and new friends and partners. And so it's really been exciting few days. So
yeah.
Talk, old friend right here. So Starlab is a unique new aerospace platform that is really looking to serve the global community, the global space community. NASA is obviously one of our main customers, but all the international space agencies we're looking to partner with, as well as commercial space companies, research facilities. It is a one-shot, one-launch space station. It has about the volume, if you will, the volume of a 3-story condominium. It's about 8 meters wide by about 8 meters tall. So I have about all the same research space as the current configuration of the International Space Station. What you find about what we think that the prize of the ISS is the international part of it. I think that's what really makes the ISS, what it is today. As we all know, the ISS will not be around forever. It's scheduled to deorbit around 2030, 2031. And what we're really trying to ensure is that there's no gap in between from when the ISS is decommissioned to having a continued human presence in space. And that's really what Voyager and Starlab will be, is a continued human presence in space, up to 4 crew. And we've got a great partnership. So that's kind of a visual, if you will. But here's our global joint venture. And I think this is really the secret sauce of what makes Starlab great, is the partners that we have. Voyager is the majority partner right now, but we also, first and foremost, we sought out a European partner to bring in not just the entire European community, but also the European Space Agency and get their involvement. Again, this isn't just a NASA project. This isn't a US project. This is a global project. So Airbus brings that with the European aspect. We have Mitsubishi Corporation in Japan and their level of expertise that they have in robotics. It's going to be incredibly helpful. MDA of Canada. And their long history and legacy with the robotic arms is going to be critical, and that brings in the Canadian Space Agency, our recent partner Palantir. They're going to make it the first AI-enabled space station. So that's what they're bringing. Sorry, Elsa, not to upstage you a little bit there. But also some of our other partners, the non-equity partners, sometimes you got to look outside of your own community and your own bubble. And we did that with, we did this a while back when we partnered with Hilton Hotels. Actually, it was DoubleTree. And one of our legacy companies, NanoRacks, actually brought the DoubleTree oven to space and cooked the first cookie, DoubleTree cookie in space. And so Hilton, with that long legacy of hospitality and innovation, they were the perfect hospitality partner, if you will, for comfort, sustainability, exercise cabins, things of that nature. And again, it's looking outside the box a little bit. Also, seeing that Starlab will be a research facility, we thought it'd be ideal to have an analog research facility right there on the Earth, terrestrial, if you will. So that's what the Ohio State University brings, the George Washington Carver Science Center, which a lot of the research and development will do before you go up to space. And that's available to everyone. But before you go up to space, to test it out, you do it there on the ground. And our launch partner, SpaceX, will also be, I think we were one of the first people to contract on Starship. And so every time Starship launches and has this incremental improvements, we get more and more excited because we know that we'll be on there. And then also Northrop Grumman for docking and cargo resupply. And I think, and then just another view of Starlab. But Starlab, I should also point out, is part of the NASA CLD contract, the phase 1 contract that was awarded 2.5 years ago. Voyager and NanoRacks was one of 3 companies that was awarded this phase 1 contract. Blue Origin was the other company, and Northrop Grumman got the third award. Axiom, you probably know, has a different, they're looking to do a free flyer as well, but it's a different contract. So of those 3, Northrop Grumman has decided that the contract wasn't for them, and they decided to partner with us, so we're excited about that. So it comes down to the 2 of us, and I know there's some other companies that will be bidding on that phase 2, and that should be announced. There are RFPs coming out later this year, and then next year they should hopefully have an award. So, and we can discuss that a little bit more later.
Yeah. I want to briefly come back to the partners you chose, to the strategic partner. I don't know, the space partners.
Oh.
So you chose, and especially the partnership with Airbus, which creates a nice bridge between the European industry and US industry. Was this a conscious decision? Did you want to include these partners from the beginning when you set up the collaboration?
Yes and no. First and foremost, we're looking for best-in-class partners, and I think Airbus's long legacy of what they did on the International Space Station, the whole program they have with the European Space Agency, we just felt they were a natural fit for us. But it also, consciously, subconsciously, they're also a gateway for us for the European community, and that kind of partnership to bring in other European partners. And so we did that, also working with the European Space Agency, because again, a lot of country in Europe, you guys have the European Space Agency, and with a lot of the countries having astronauts. There's several countries out there that don't have astronauts, don't have a viable space agency, and I think we're looking for partners like that to be able to bring other nations into the fold. So it's just not the same group of 25 countries that can work and play in space.
And then, looking back at ISS, so ISS was built up as an international collaboration. It worked a lot with this bartering between the agencies over several years. So everybody contributed an element to the collaboration, and then you shared the facility, and together you did space exploration. So this model will not be possible one-to-one, or cannot be applied one-to-one on commercial stations. How do you think will this collaboration on one side with the traditional space agencies, which used to be the biggest users in microgravity, and on the other side also, how would an interesting collaboration with other industrial partners look like?
Well, I think the days of bartering is kind of falling to the wayside again, because we're not just going to be dealing with nation states and national space agencies. They will be, I don't want to call them an anchor tenant, but they will certainly be a tenant there. But we're also going to bring in other agencies and commercial partners too. So there's a question earlier today, I think it may have been on the first panel, about the role of private astronauts in space. And the private astronauts, this isn't a new thing that, I know Axiom has been launching them recently and going back and forth to the space station. But if you think back to the early space shuttle flights in the 80s, there's a lot of contractors on those flights. The payload specialists were actually private astronauts. McDonnell Douglas, had theirs to work. Their astronauts go up, or their mission specialists go up on various missions, so on shuttle rides. So there'll be also the private astronauts that are working there, as well as the agency, different space agencies, and we'll allot the time accordingly.
Aaron, Nicola, any thoughts on collaboration? How do you think this new commercial environment will evolve in the next years?
Yeah, I agree a lot with Eric. I think I do think there's going to be continued collaboration. Starlab's a great kind of example. I think that'll grow into multiple entities and nation states kind of working together. I think if you look forward to the end of next decade, orbit's going to be very international. It's already that today, but I think you'll see definitely some very collaborative space stations, but then you'll see several nations, probably even dozens, having their own space station or space station modules up in space that they can call their own, and they can do what they want with. And I think that's going to continue to grow, where the decade after that, it's just going to be, everybody who's serious has a presence. So I'm very excited about international. One thing I love about space is just it's such a collaborative industry. There's no such thing as pure competition. Like competitors partner. Countries like Russia and the U.S. come together for ISS. In the U.S., you have companies like Boeing and Lockheed who go head-to-head, coming together to make like ULA. I think it's a very collaborative industry, and I think it's going to continue, which I'm excited about.
I'm excited about that perspective, and I truly believe, like you do, that we should fight to continue this international collaboration. I may have some reservation personally on the challenges within the geopolitical evolution, the race between China and America, Russia, and at war with Europe. Certainly emerging nations that are also looking at some way to plant the flag instead of really pushing humanity towards a common goal. So I think we need to make sure that is the future we will have, because it's not necessarily where the world is today. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably what most of us in this room want to see as a future. So.
And how do you see this new commercial space station, or do you believe they will accelerate? Do we will see more non-traditional companies active in space?
I personally believe strongly in this, and I think that Aaron was one of the pioneers with Men in Space. But ultimately, if you take the in-space manufacturing market, which is one of the opportunities for Voyager, for Max Space, for ourselves, it's still a relatively small market, primarily driven by government funding of experimental research. And most of the industrial companies, even the one we did some experiment, are still, nobody in the big pharma wake up in the middle of the night wondering how they're going to do their next space mission. So there's also a need for us to educate that market, and that will be probably also a change in the sense that we would expect agency to help us grow that maturity and unleash a much bigger market. We feel that by 2030, we could get a $10 billion market in space manufacturing. It's hundreds of millions today, but that is also to be done with starting where the commercial customers are and get them to space in a way that is as frictionless as it is. Today, it's still very complex to comply with the constraint, the safety, the language, the process. And I think that of all countries, Luxembourg is really a leading country to make things simple, easy, and effective. But that's something that is still far from being where we want it to be.
I think we're so early. It's kind of like draw an analogy to Bitcoin, which is like 100,000 a coin right now, a little bit less. I feel like maybe when we started Made in Space in 2010, it was $1 a coin or something, and now it's tens or maybe $100. Like the industry has just grown so much. Back then, there was only maybe a couple dozen space startups. Now there's thousands, and they're going to keep growing. It's going to be really fed by investors, that want to invest in big moonshots, some of them literal, and I think it's very early days. Yeah, telling my kids to go work in space, but of course I would.
I I think Aaron hit a key point there. It's based on a lot of this is the investors and the investment community. We have a partnership with NASA, but that's only going to pay for a fraction of the space station. So we have to generate that interest from the private sector. We believe that there is a great amount of interest, and there's a great amount of, in the fields of biomedical research and microgravity research, and that's why we're focusing Starlab on as a research facility. But the initial, not I won't say the initial, but the feedback that we're getting from investors is they want more space, literally, figuratively, and we see a prime market for commercial space stations moving forward.
And how do you get these non-space companies involved, the pharmaceutical? Are you reaching out to them actively? Are you developing these lab facilities together with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or how do you do this?
It's a two-way street where we're reaching out to people, to companies that we feel have viable products that could only be enhanced by living and working in space, and also companies are coming to us with their ideas of what they want to do. What we've envisioned Starlab is it's a peer community. It's kind of customer based, that customer interaction, if you will. That is, what are the customer needs, and that's going to help shape the demand of how we develop and how we build Starlab and the facilities in there. It's really critical on what the customer. You can think what you think you want, but people may not come in that regards. But it's the customers that we're hearing from, they're going to help shape how we build and develop.
I mean, the biggest pharma company between the 80s and 90s decided to outsource most of their research as capital was becoming more available to improve their valuation on the stock market. They needed to improve their profitability. So they really got rid of a lot of the investment they were doing with the 10, 20, 40, 50 years. And as capital and equity was more available, biotech started to get funding, and it was easier for a big pharma to purchase a mature biotech when it was already found its market. So our experience, and we actually have customers on our first bento box flags next year, and one on our third that are really biotech pushing the envelope on drug development in space, organoid development, and we believe that biotech will be leading that pack to be acquired by big pharma when the maturity becomes longer, and that's the way I believe you'll get most of these big pharma to invest. Doesn't mean you wouldn't have more forward thinking. There's some Asian company that have been actually investing in space infrastructure in the field of pharma, but this is still the exception.
Aaron, with large inflatable structures, are you targeting specific use cases?
Yes and no. Definitely specific use cases, but the general premise is if you want to do anything interesting on orbit, you need, that's not basically a satellite or a satellite network, you need useful, usable volume. And you need it cost effective enough to build a business case around. I think this has been part of the reason the ISS has been hard to pay back. Not only is it limited in the volume that you have, but it was very expensive to make. But I think there's a lot of industries that get open when you have a lot more volume. So obviously pharmaceuticals, in-space manufacturing, any type of industrialization. There's a lot of great ideas that need more time to bake, and more importantly, I think a lot more rapid iteration cycles. We at Made in Space made the first Z-band on orbit. Most optimal optical fiber in terms of attenuation. There's a lot of ideas like that out there that need more time. If you're gonna, we're talking about human space flight. If you're gonna have humans, in there going regularly, humans generally don't like to be crammed into small kind of spots. So they like really large places to go. If you go to a nice hotel, like a Four Seasons, you usually get a big room. I think people are spending a lot of money to go to space, and so having a little bit of place to go would be good. Anything in the entertainment realm, tourism, logistics, storage, recycling, trash, a lot of trash on orbit. Need a place to put that trash, maybe a trash bin. So there's a lot of use cases for using a lot more volume in space, yeah.
And maybe one last question. Overall, so as we transition from a very institutional-driven utilization of space to a more commercial utilization, having many more commercial players that will start to operate autonomously and without the space agencies being involved, is the legal frameworks that are available today, are they enough to support and enable you to develop these new commercial use cases? Or do you see there's a need for some additional, more enabling regulations?
Well, that's a great question, because this has never been done before. So what rules apply, what regulations apply to, having a permanent human presence in space? We're looking at right now, on issues of mission authorization. This just in the U.S. alone, I'm speaking, but I think this speaks globally. Mission authorization. Who is going to license and validate and verify the mission that you're performing, and setting the rules. So there's a lot of liability that is out there. There's also insurance issues. Insurance is a major issue that no one likes to talk about. It's not sexy. It's not fun. They're at the Holiday Inn, four blocks down the street, in their boring conference. But insurance is a major factor when you're putting up a multi-billion-dollar space station. If you look at the insurance markets around the world, there's not enough capability and capacity for one launch, let alone multiple space stations. So that's an area of tremendous concern. And then you want to have things in place. Right now there's an IGA that applies, intergovernmental agreement that applies on the International Space Station. Well, how do we make a commercial IGA? For commercial players and commercial companies, and who enforces that? So I think there's a lot of regulatory issues that we're facing, and up until a few weeks ago, we're very concerned of all the regulations. But now there may be a lessening, with the new administration in Washington. There may be less regulatory hurdles that we have to deal with, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. No one likes red tape, as we say, but red tape is there for a reason sometimes, and to have those that kind of infrastructure in place and a legal framework in place, it'll be critical, at times when you need it. So. And
well said, Eric. And I cannot emphasize enough regulatory challenges. Insurance is definitely a big one. As a company, Space Cargo Limited, had like tremendous horror story going through borders, retrieving a payload from space, delivering it in Europe. Really, where does it come from? Coming from the US, coming from space? When you land somewhere, you need to also go to the production site, to the delivery side of your customers, and become extremely challenging. Today, there's still many agreements that need to be signed between countries around the world, and insurance is really still a huge challenge.
Yeah, it's a big factor.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. To add to the red tape, I'm definitely I'm pretty torn myself, because I'm an entrepreneur, and I support small startups, and generally regulations help the big companies and not the small ones. And so that's my general belief, but I have a big, maybe fear that if we don't set the right framework in place, that a company could put humans up, and we could have a mistake happen, and it could really set us back a decade, maybe longer. We have so much momentum right now in the space industry, and I'd really hate, we all know about the Titanic sub disaster that happened recently. We don't want that to happen in space. It'd really set us back. And as a big human spaceflight guy, somebody who wants to go to the moon and look at Earth myself before I die, I hope that doesn't happen. So you need to find the balance. You need to keep enabling startups, because startups is where the innovation, the disruption happens, and not just favor the behemoths that can afford to get through the regulations, but also provide a framework that we can really block the really bad things from happening.
Okay, so maybe to wrap up, maybe the question to each of you: what do you see is most needed to to make these commercial platforms successful? Nicolas.
Well, you need viable business. So as we move on, I think any education of the biggest potential customers will be needed. So I think that's one of the things that, and I'm speaking as a European, as a Luxembourg-based company, looking at the next ministerial. There's the BSGN conference starting tomorrow in this very premise. I think that more money to BSGN, more money to actually teach, educate the big industrial company in the field of chemical, agriculture, pharma, new material, electronics, about the opportunity of space will make a good impact to all the rest. The other topics we touched, regulation that make things safer, but also open up for creativity, insurance price going down, that may be subsidized. I think one of the things that made the commercial space on the launch side effective was really government stepping up to in the US, in France, and other places to cover the potential issues and cost of the issues. So that's something that needs to be continued to be worked on.
I think what we need the most is certainty in a very uncertain business. And what I mean by that is the regulatory certainty, the certainty of governments that we're dealing with, that what they say is what they mean, and sticking to that. For instance, if you're going to deorbit, no one's going to do it. No investor is going to invest in commercial companies if they see that the ISS is still there. So, NASA and the Congress and the different space agencies said, okay, we're going to deorbit the space station. Well, that's not real until you actually put a plan in motion to actually deorbit the space station. So we're dealing with that uncertainty with investors. And then you get these signals and signs that, the spell of certainty. For instance, NASA budgeting for a deorbit vehicle, to deorbit the ISS. When you see signs like that, and investors see signs in that opens up the investment to others. So they see that kind of certainty. It's like, oh, this is real, this is going to happen, 2030, 2031 is going to be the date. Oh, and NASA, and again, I'm speaking for the US, from US policy, the policy being a continued human presence in space, well, then you can work backwards then. But you can't work that much backwards. There's going to be a gap that it closes. So the certainty of NASA saying, hey, we're going to be awarding these contracts at such a time, okay, and then you're going to have to release an RFP for companies. So they have that certainty of what they can bid for, how they raise money, and the timeline to launch, so there is no gap in human spaceflight. Because I think that'd be, I think that'd be one of the biggest travesties, of our space programs, collective space programs, if there are not humans in space, at any given time. As we see, some of our near peers like China, with a continued human presence in space, with folks from the People's Liberation Army that are maintaining their space station. I think it's critical for the US, Europe, Asia, all of our international partners to have that permanent presence in space. And you need certainty to have that. So.
I agree with that. Okay, pitching my own book. I think we need very, very low-cost real estate in space so we can close some of these business models. But along with that, maybe it's not a need, but I think it would really go a long way, is a slight change to the traditional investment timeline. If usually, especially angel, seed, A, these investors that invested these rounds, they want a return on investment in 5 to 7 years. And in space, if you're willing to wait a little bit longer, you can get a lot more gain. It can take 5 years to even get like your first product off the ground. If you look at SpaceX, they're worth hundreds of billions of dollars, but they weren't worth that even after a decade after they were started. They were barely worth $1 billion. And so, I think we're starting to see this where investors are like, okay, I'm more patient. This is a hard game, and if I'm patient enough, I can get really, really big gains. And I think if we get more of the investment community bought into that thought, then we can have, all these dreams and things that we've been talking about happening kind of come true. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
For this interesting discussion. So we need long-term investors, clear commitment by the politics, and and rules and good business cases to see this happen.
And low insurance cost.
And low entrance costs.
That's the secret sauce. You got it all right there. You got a business plan right there.
Big round of applause
Now go
for our
execute.
panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Nice job.
Hey, you too.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you very much, Bob Lambore, for moderating this panel.
Thank you.
Continued success. Thank you, gentlemen.